Hey everyone, my guest today is Calista Flockhart. Calista most recently starred in Ryan Murphy's series Feud, Capote versus the Swans. She made her TV debut portraying the title role in the award-winning series Ally McBeal, and she also starred on Brothers and Sisters, Full Circle, Supergirl, Web Therapy, FaceTiming with Mommy, and The Penguins of Madagascar. Her theater credits include Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Glass Menagerie, Bash, Latter-day Play, The Three Sisters, and The Loop. Those are not in chronological order. And The Loop somehow, and we'll get into it today, helped her land the role of Gene Hackman's daughter in the Mike Nichols film Birdcage. Other film credits include Fragile, Things You Can Tell Just by Looking at Her, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Telling Lies in America. She is married to the actor Harrison Ford, and she is one of the most prolific and chameleon-like actresses of our generation. I have been such a fan since the very first, maybe off Broadway play I ever saw her in. So welcome. I'm thrilled to have Calista Flockhart on the podcast. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
I know that it is probably painful hearing your bio read in front of you. But, that's such a thumbnail sketch of all the things that you've done. And so I kind of want to work backwards for a minute because my first memories of you are just sort of like the world of Malaparte and Naked Angels and sort of all of these young people starting theater companies in New York, either with people they went to college with or people they met kind of in early days. And in my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, my dear friend Kelly Wolf, who was in the Naked Angels world, I feel like, were you roommates with Kelly back in the day or just friends? But I feel like that's how I knew of you.
Kelly Wolf, first of all, what a beautiful human being. I'll say that. And
Yeah.
no, we were not roommates, but we were friends. But
Okay.
we did cohabitate for a little bit in an apartment that belonged to uh, Gregory Peck, who had this gorgeous apartment in Gramercy Park, and he let actors stay there. And Cecilia Peck was a good friend of Kelly's, and
Okay.
Cecilia Peck is so lovely, and we crashed there for a little bit, and people just kind of went in and out. It was really fun and crazy and generous of all of them.
I love the Gregory Peck actor kibbutz on Graham, like with a key to the park, like of course. So tell me, if we go even if we dial back a minute even before that, and then we'll end up today with each other. Um, Getting to New York as an actress, how does that happen for you?
Well, there were a lot of pivotal moments that probably led me to New York. I went to college for acting. I went to Mason Gross School of the Arts, and I studied acting there, and it was very theater focused. And you're from New Jersey?
Yeah, I'm from
Yeah.
Teaneck. Yeah. Where
Oh,
did you
you're
grow up?
I grew up a lot of places, but I ended up in Medford, New Jersey,
Okay.
which
And
is
and
near Cherry Hill.
yes, and Mason Gross, for people who don't know, is part of Rutgers University, which is a New Jersey university, and that's the acting program there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So yeah, so I studied acting there, and then I went straight from college to New York.
Had you been so in terms of being so focused on doing it in college, when did the bug or this really is compelling to me, the world of theater, when does that kind of enter your consciousness?
Um, I think I was one of those kids that played outside a lot, alone, making up stories, daydreaming a lot, spending an enormous amount of time in my imagination, which a lot of people do, but I think I took it to the next level eventually. There, I would say that when I was a senior in high school, I did not get a part in the high school musical, and I was really disappointed about that. And I don't remember whether it was my mother or my father, but somebody read in the paper that they were having auditions for a play called Barefoot in the Park, and they were having an audition that night for a community theater show. And my dad, we got in the car and he drove me to the theater and they gave me the script, which I'd never read. My mother told me a little bit about the story. And I was out in the hallway practicing the scene. And I went in and so, it was so embarrassing. And I auditioned. And my father was sitting in the audience. He was sitting in the theater watching my audition. And we left and we had a good laugh.
Uh-huh.
And I overheard my father talking to my mother. I guess I was eavesdropping, and I remember this. He said, Kay, that's my mother's name, was Kay. She was actually good. It was good. And I remember feeling all excited about it. And the next night I got a call from the director and I got on the phone with him and he was such a nice man and he said, "You did not get the part. You didn't get the part, but you were very good and you have something and you should continue." And I was so excited. And he told me that I was too young. I think I was 17 at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So that was it was a bit of a determining factor. Um, I sort of changed my mind about where I was going to go to school. And I'd also met a wonderful manager. Again, my mother was looking in the paper for things for me to do. Maybe she was worried that I was aimless or something. I'm not sure about that. But I went to Cherry Hill to meet this manager, and she sort of started sending me out on some commercial auditions and things like that. And then I went to college, which you're not allowed to audition when you're in college. So that fell
Right.
apart a
Right.
bit. But I think all of those little things just sort of led me, to Mason Gross School of the Arts. And then I didn't really realize that I was getting into the BFA program at first. I don't know how I missed that part, but it ended up being a really wonderful thing for me. And it was, um, I had just wonderful professors, professors who were working in the theater, working in New York. Bill Esper I'm sure you've heard of Bill
Of
Esper.
course.
He was just so great and amazing. And um, yeah, the my education, we did all the costumes and the sets and we painted stages and we worked with, I remember working in the shop, coming home, having to take a shower covered in metal scrap. I mean, it was
Right.
just,
Right.
but it was all really wonderful. We had to stage manage, whatever. Everybody does this when you're in a theater school.
Right. All the
Was
jobs.
all the jobs, and
Right.
I was very grateful for that education and I was very green. I had never had any formal training or anything, so it was formative for me, and I still, it's part of who I am today. I carry it
Hmm.
for sure.
Do you feel like there's stuff when you go back, you know, there's sort of learning craft and then there's like the doing of the thing and trying to figure out how to take all the process and steps that you have time for in a conservatory kind of program and then applying them to like real life situations. Do you feel like there are still things to this day that not just emotionally or sort of in your fiber as a human, but in terms of craft that are still connected to Esper and that work? And can you share what that feels like? It's so hard to articulate it, but if you can.
Um, yes, I think so. What I can best describe it maybe by like an example. When I approach a part now, I try to take whatever I can get from the script for nothing. You know, it doesn't always have to be that hard. Sometimes it just comes to you and it flows, and you don't really have to do any work at all. Um, and then sometimes you come across a part of the script that you don't understand or you don't
Right.
know. I go right back to, okay, now I've got to do some some work. What am I doing? What do I want?
Yeah.
How am I going to get what I want? What are the stakes? And I kind of, yeah, I mean, I pull it. I remember Bill Esper told me after we were doing a a showcase. You know, you do a monologue and you do a scene when you graduate in front of a bunch of agents. And he told us, I feel like he told me privately, but I don't think he did. But that's my memory.
Yeah.
I think he told the whole class, he said, now take everything you learned and just throw it away or put it in your back pocket and only take it out when you need it.
Uh-huh. So
And
to trust that it's in you.
I think so. I think that's what he meant. It's there and you have it if you need it, but there's a good chance you don't need it.
Right.
But because it is part of your fiber now. I mean, we were very young, so now after all this time has gone by, it seems I guess it's evolved and it's just a natural, more natural, maybe. I'm not sure that's the right word, but something happens like that.
Yeah. I've been talking to as you know, I've done so many episodes, and it's been so interesting talking to people about sort of process, like Julianne Moore, who I'm sure you know, loves to just be in conversation with her scene partners, not connected to what they're about to film. And sort of until the last minute, she's very happy to be talking about like her children, what are we going to have for lunch? And then once they call action, can kind of very easily, which I think is remarkable and wonderful, um, just start the scene. But it kind of comes out of having a conversation that's not about the work, right? Or not about the character. And then I talk to people who have to like lock themselves up in a room and not talk to anyone and listen to, there's so many different ways. Do you feel like generally it just depends on the thing you're doing? Or do you have like, I know what I need, no matter what it is, TV, film, theater? Do you sort of have a sense of who you are in those moments before action or places?
I would say that I think you are right. I think it depends on the part, but and also not just the part, but the scene that you
Uh-huh.
happen. Um, but I tend to be more like Julianne Moore. I'm very much joke around until the last second, action, fall into it. I mean, and you have to be careful because not everybody works that way. So if you're joking around and somebody else is trying to prepare,
Yeah.
you're such a selfish jerk. Uh,
Sorry.
so
Sorry.
so
Sorry. I didn't know. Yeah,
I try to be conscious of that.
exactly.
But
I know.
I think there's also I've tried to analyze this about myself because I really do joke around right until I'm going on.
Yeah.
And I wonder often if it's part of a way to relieve some anxiety. You know, it's
Huh.
just a natural way to kind of not be anxious. Um, and I think it does depend. If you're doing a television show and you're on year 4, you really know that character inside and out. But if you're
Yeah.
doing a play and it's opening night, that might be a little bit a different way to enter the room.
You did so many plays when you started, and I just so another person I just was talking to who because you did the Three Sisters is David Marshall Grant, and he's like,
Uh,
ask her if she remembers running lines for Ally McBeal together for her audition. And I'm like, I will ask her if she remembers running lines with you, or if that's his fantasy of his part in your getting Ally McBeal. But like looking back on those ensembles of plays that you were doing, um, or sophistry, like really early on, just working with people who've had also tremendous longevity in their careers. What were you like? And maybe it's not different now, although I doubt you auditioned very much. What were you like as an auditioner?
I think I was pretty terrible in the beginning. I think I was too nervous in the beginning. And then I remember having some sort of epiphany, if it's possible to have an epiphany when you're very young. But I feel like I had this epiphany where I thought, this is your opportunity to act. And instead of putting your attention on the person you're auditioning for, just pretend you're doing the part. The challenge is in the part, not pleasing the people that you're auditioning for.
Right.
And somehow that switch in my brain sort of gave me a center, a focus. I always say, get your feet in the ground, put the roots down, settle down, and just do the part like you would if you had the part. And that was a big change for me. That I started auditioning better. I started
Mm-hmm.
to get parts after that. And then you know how it is. You get one job and it leads to the next job and then it leads to the next job. And so um, I'm not sure that after a while, my audition, maybe it didn't matter that much after a while, but because I've
Because
had
there was a body of work that they could also look at, that it wasn't all about that moment in the room.
sometimes, because I could really, be absolutely horrible in auditions if you just happen to go down the wrong path, which I have been known to do many times. So, yeah.
Does that like, do you have like when you just said that, was there a particular one you were remembering or just decades of it?
Oh, there's decades of humiliation, decades of humiliation. Um, when you go, I'm sure you've experienced this. You go into an audition and you're nervous and you don't have a director at home and you're just hoping that maybe you've figured it out. And you go in and you say 5 lines and they say, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, it's a lovely
Love
feeling.
that. I want to make a scent out of that. That would be my perfume. It would be called Thank You. You just, you
It's
just
so,
spray it on actors from.
there's really nothing more humbling than that. I remember once I don't remember what it was for. It was a regional theater job. And I was auditioning in the middle of, and I thought I wasn't aware of anything, but it was going okay. And the director said, thank you. And I don't know, something inside of me got angry. And I glared at him and I walked out of the room and I was mad. And
Mm-hmm.
that didn't usually happen to me, but I'm sure I was hurt and embarrassed and it turned into some sort of anger.
Yeah.
I got home and they called and said you have the part. And
Well,
I I was really I was like, well then just let me finish.
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So it is hurtful that. I don't like that.
Yeah. And also like and then you got it. Like what?
Yeah.
Like
But
what?
you
Like
you have enough time.
yeah.
Think
That,
of
that
all these
it's set up
actors.
that way.
Yeah, these actors that come in and they've taken the subway, they've taken the train, they've done what they're there, they've worked on it. You just be respectful, damn it.
Yeah.
I don't like getting cut off. I think it's not okay. I don't
Right.
think people do it like they used to do it. Back in my day, people were just ruthless, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I mean, now no one's even really going in a room anymore. So it's a whole other set of humiliations when you're saying like there's no one at home. Like luckily you live with an actor. So maybe there's someone to like bounce ideas off of when you're working on something. But most people don't live with an actor or a director. And now you're just doing it with like, your iPhone trying to kind of figure out. So at least you're protected from that sort of flash dance other side of the table judgy people, but it's impossible. You really like when I think about like Julie Harris playing your mother in The Glass Menagerie, and like sort of all of these people that I know I worshiped growing up, and then very quickly you're sort of working whatever that regional play was, that just led to one after the other of kind of like really incredible directors, incredible material, both like new or classic material. Um, like you really got that 10,000 hours in the world of Malcolm Gladwell of like doing it and doing the plays and seeing what works for you and being part of like really beautiful ensembles. And then you have to remind me because I have a really hard problem with dates, but like, did you do Birdcage first or Ally McBeal first?
I did Birdcage first.
Was that your first movie?
um, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't remember. I think I may have done a movie called Pictures of Baby Jane Doe. It
Okay.
was an independent sort of movie. I can't really remember, but it was I haven't done very many movies.
Yeah, yeah.
It was it could have been one of the first ones for sure. Yeah, maybe.
Well, I remember like Danny Futterman, like there's Nathan Lane and Robin Williams and Gene Hackman and Diane Wiest, and then somehow there was this choice to just have fabulous young people who were not Oscar winners at the time playing these kids. So, do you remember much about the process of getting that film? And Mike Nichols as a director? And was that, he's been very dreamy for a lot of people, but not everyone has the same experience. Um, can you talk a little bit about entering that world?
Yeah, it was quite intimidating to say
I'm
the least.
sure. I'm sure.
I was doing a play, I was doing a play called The Loop, which I think you mentioned, and Mike had come to see it. It was a play by Warren Leight, who's such a great playwright. It was great. And Mike had come to see it, and then I was offered the part, and I was offered the part in Birdcage, and at the time, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think I was doing a movie called Drunks with Diane Wiest, and we talked about it. We talked about doing the Birdcage, and I said I'm doing it, and she said so am I, and she was playing my mother, and so that was kind of fun. So I had a little bit of comfort in knowing Diane. And by the way, Diane Wiest is just, I don't know if you've ever met her, but she is one of the most gentle, just such a funny, beautiful human being. And so there's nothing, I felt safe with Diane, and I felt loved by Diane, and I certainly loved her. So that helped a lot. And then I had such a crush on Gene Hackman. Like he was just so wonderful. And I loved Mike. I was one of the people that had a dreamy experience, and Robin Williams too. Like they just couldn't have been more welcoming and open and lovely. So I had a wonderful experience, but I was intimidated by everybody, and but actors, like, I always think about that. Most actors are just so enveloping and wonderful and inclusive, and I just love actors.
Being on, I mean, for people our age, Ally McBeal like sort of came out of nowhere and made such a like splash so quickly. And also, I had seen you do many serious, I mean, you're Laura, like in Glass Menagerie, like just these beautiful, vulnerable, complex, relatable humans, right? From all walks of earth. Um, and suddenly you are playing someone with all of that and also like Lucille Ball hilarious. So my question for you, because it's not that you didn't do comedies, but you get cast in one lane and everyone's like, for these incredible classical plays, we're going to get Calista. Like she's got that. Um, and so to suddenly see you be like literally like, I mean, Lucille Ball was such a hero of mine, and we grew up with those, Carol Burnett and then Madeline Kahn and Lily Tomlin, and then like without one talk about Gladwell, without 10,000 hours of being on a sitcom that's suddenly a dramedy, like a new genre, it was like it seemed seamless and like a fish in water. So like, can you just talk about to David Marshall Grant's, we'll give him some credit that he may have run lines with you for the audition. Um, did it just fit like a glove? And you were like, finally, now I get to do this other thing? Or were you like, I don't know how to do this? Like, I mean, I know it's a long time ago. I'm asking you a lot of questions that are not about Feud, which happened basically yesterday, but let's go there for a minute if you can recall it.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to talk about David Marshall Grant,
Okay.
because David Marshall Grant not only ran lines with me, um, he is essentially the reason that I went and auditioned for when I went to LA to have a screen test. It was really because of David Marshall Grant. So
Okay.
we were doing the play Three Sisters, and there were all these fabulous actors in it. And and David finally, and I this might be boring. It's probably very boring, but
Let's
David,
bore everybody.
yeah, let's bore everybody. It's boring, and it's because I've told it before, but it is the truth. He said to me, Callista, what do you I think I had a piece of paper on the wall that said, should Callista audition for Ally McBeal? And then I put a line, and then yes and no, and then people would check off what they thought. I mean, sort of. Anyway, it was all kind of fun. It was just meant to be fun. And David said, what are you doing? Come on. If you, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to go to LA. You're going to make a little money. It's going to be a terrible show. It's going to flop, and you're going to come home, but you're going to have some money in the bank. We were all very poor. I was very poor. And he said, or you're going to go to LA, and it's going to get picked up, and it's going to be successful, and you're going to be a huge star. So, and I remember thinking, oh, right. Okay, that's a good point, and I'll see you later. And I went. So he was pivotal in that decision. And then he did run lines with me for sure. Um, and then everybody, made fun of, it was kind of Mary Tyler Moore. Everybody would put their hair and go kind of like that to just sort of make fun of it, and in a nice way, not in a
Yes.
mean way. And
Yes.
yeah, so then that's what happened. I was what was the question was, no, it was not an easy beginning. It was a wonderful beginning. The actors were just really good. The writing was really funny. The writing was really good, but we didn't know what the tone of the show was.
Uh-huh.
It was a challenge trying to figure it out. And I don't even think, just not just for me, not for the actors, but probably, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure that David was wondering what the tone was. And
Uh-huh.
I know the director was wondering what the tone was. And so the director came up with this alley light and alley dark. So we would do one take of alley light, and I can't explain it other than it's a different feeling. And then the alley dark was a more serious approach. Um, and I don't know how that manifested in the editing and all of that. I do know that I ran into a woman one time at an event, and she had been working for Fox in the editing room, and she said the first pilot of Ally McBeal was really dark, and she really loved it. She said it was really dark, and then they changed it maybe to appeal to a wider audience, or how that happens. And
Yeah, that's interesting.
I thought that was really interesting because we did
Yeah.
versions, and then eventually it just became kind of a anything goes, just shows evolve and they become what they are, and then it does become easy. And my favorite thing in the world is to do that. I'm like you. I was Lucille Ball was my absolute favorite. Like so many of us, we grew up
Mm-hmm.
with her, and she was just amazing comedy, physical comedy, and it was my
Yeah.
favorite thing to fall down and just um, dive into that world. But I spent a lot of time on Ally McBeal crying. I remember, not Callista, the
Right.
character.
Oh, I was going to say that
Yeah,
seems
no,
awful.
Allie was just this emotional
Yeah.
roller coaster. She was up and down all day. And I remember feeling at the end of the day completely emotionally wiped out, so exhausted. And then and I'm not complaining. I really am not. I'm actually bragging because I used to feel so proud. I'd be like, whew, I really went through it today and I'm
Yeah.
going to get,
I'm a real actress. Right.
yeah,
I'm a
I'm going to
real boy. Yeah. Yeah.
get up and do it again tomorrow. And the only thing that I remember too, I learned how to act really fast. There's no rehearsal time.
Right.
I tried to take as much time as I could with all the blocking and the props but you realize after a while that you really cannot afford to spend that much time doing that. So we learned that we started to rehearse very quickly. Um, and you can't get in the weeds, and it was really hard for me to keep up. So I would learn my lines for one day, and then I'd go home and take a little break, and then have to learn my lines for the next day. And once I was in what I called in the weeds, it was really hard to catch up. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I remember I would stutter a little bit in the character. And that was really about me trying to come up with a line.
Right.
Um,
And searching for it while talking at the same time.
and
Yeah.
we were word perfect.
And that
We
was
were,
important to David, to the writer. So
yes, yes,
that's incredible because there's such an improvisational spirit in the watching of it. It felt so alive and real. So the idea that he was able to write for everyone eventually, so that it really felt like there was no acting necessary. Um, but for you to have the pressure of having it to, which is fine, it's his right, right? Like every writer has the right to work the way they work. But when you're getting a tremendous number of pages and rewrites, and there's also that expectation that can be very stressful
yeah.
in the end.
It um yeah.
And also, what is remarkable, Cameron Manheim was just on the podcast, and I just had this moment where I was like, he was writing maybe three shows at the same time. And she's like, oh no, he wrote all of it. Like maybe there was a writer's room, but really he was like, I mean, that that is sort of a skill. I mean, just to be that prolific is just sort of unbelievable. Like that a
Yeah,
human can do that,
he was gifted.
gifted, and also like had it wasn't like he also had a family. Like he also had a real life outside of it, which I thought, I mean, the other thing is, not only did you become sort of iconic in this role, you also became iconic as someone who was like, I'm not yet in a relationship, but I want to be a parent, and sort of also like playing this very, feminist icon character. And then in whatever private life was shared, whether you wanted it to be or not. And I'm sure that's a whole other chapter in terms of navigating that. Um, at a relatively young age and not being a Nepo baby who had tremendous experience, like people we do know of how to navigate public and private at the same time, you you did it. Like you wanted to be a mom and you were willing to do that regardless of whether you would be partnered. And then you ended up being partnered. If you build it, they will come is like an incredible manifesto. So that was all going on. You've had a lot going on and you weren't from LA. So did you have a community? Like, were you building community? So in the 4 minutes that you weren't working, did you slowly like find friends and comfort in living in LA, or did it seem strange for a very long time?
It was honestly pretty strange for me. I loved the people I worked with very much, but we didn't spend a lot of time outside of the show
Mm,
together. But I had a few friends that uh, from New York that came and stayed with me, on and off again, and so that was always really comforting. And I had a handful of friends. I had Jessica Queller, who's
hmm.
also one of my very dear friends, but she lived on the other side of town, and I was working so much that we didn't spend an enormous amount of time together. But I feel like eventually I had friends and I had support, and my decision to become a mother was supported by talking to other actresses and getting the idea, and I was inspired by Michelle Pfeiffer. Um, so all of that helped me a
Hmm.
great. But yeah, I remember when I came to LA, I didn't know how to drive a car. I had learned how to drive a car in high school, of course, and then I moved to New York City. Well, I went to college, I didn't have a car. And then I
Hmm.
went to New York City and I never had a car. And then I moved to LA and all of a sudden I'm handed a pair of keys and drive on the freeway. And I took Sepulveda for many years because I was afraid of the freeway and I didn't know how to rent a car. I didn't know how to rent a car. I didn't know how to lease a car. I didn't know how to
Right,
buy a car. I didn't know.
right,
And I
right.
didn't know LA at all. I'd never spent any time here. So it was all very foreign. And I decided that I hated LA and I would go right back to New York the minute this job was over. And of course, now I love LA and I'm here and I've never left.
Huh.
So it's funny how life um, turns on a dime. That's a song from
Do
Ally
you think, as a
McBeal.
matter of fact, do you think if you had not, I mean, is part of that because you married someone who was so entrenched in living like in LA too, or did you just fall in love with it and sort of all it had to offer in terms of nature and beauty and hiking? Like there's a lot of beauty if you're once you're off the 405. Um, did you sort of find yourself actually connecting to the place, or is it I married someone who was also here and so we stayed?
Harrison was actually living in New York when I met him.
Oh,
So I would say it was becoming a mom and having a dog, and I hike almost every day of my life, and it is a real meditative, wonderful thing for me that I would have a very hard time giving it up at this
yeah,
point.
yeah.
So that was a factor, and I also remember I was this might sound kind of weird, but I had Liam in a stroller in New York, and he was very young, a baby. And I kept worrying about the cigarettes that people were smoking because they were right in Liam's face when I was pushing the stroller.
Right.
And I remember thinking to myself, okay, that's the moment where I said, I'm not moving back right now. But having said that, I miss New York. So I love New York and I miss New York. And I miss seeing all the theater that I used to see that I don't see anymore.
Yeah.
I don't see enough of, yeah. So yeah. So
It is
anyway, yeah.
it worked out. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of which, I didn't get to see it, but my understanding of your Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with Zachary Quinto and just a beautiful cast directed by Gordon Greenberg. Um, maybe born out of an idea discussed at Jessica Queller's wedding based on conversations I've had maybe with Gordon and Jessica and other people. Um, like that return to the stage, was that the first time you'd done a play in many, many years, or it was just a more publicized theatrical
No,
experience?
no, that was the first one that I had done in a really long time. I had done a lot of I don't know if you are familiar with LA Theater Works.
Mm, yep.
Yeah, so I did a lot of recordings of plays, and that was my way of doing a little bit of theater with a script and other actors, but we were reading in front of an audience. But other than that, I hadn't done a play in a really long time. So that was for sure the first one.
I heard it was incredible. I heard that your Martha was just extraordinary. Um, what also when you think of parts, like you're like, I'm part of the younger couple. And then you realize, like, no, I'm a grown-up woman now, and I'm gonna play Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which it's so heady to realize, like, well, yeah, that's where we are. We thought of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton as like these much older god and
Yeah.
goddess creatures. Um, what was the sort of inspiration specifically with that part? And were you scared to do it, or were you like, I want to do this? This is going to be great.
Oh no, I was terrified.
Okay, good.
It's a
Okay,
lot to
good. Yeah.
Um, but it all started. I love Edward Albee so much when I was in college. Always, The Goat was another one of my favorite plays, but Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is just a part that I have always wanted to play, and I spoke with Mike Nichols a lot about it during the Birdcage. And he told me at that time, he said, "Oh, you will be a wonderful honey." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. I want to play Martha. I want to play Martha." And he said to me, um, "Martha will be like rolling over in bed for you."
Huh.
And that gave me confidence that he didn't say, "Oh, you're not right for the part." He
Right.
said he believed that he saw something in me, and maybe he was just saying it to get rid of me. But at the time, I took it very seriously, and I decided that he was very also he was a Scorpio, and I'm a Scorpio, and so he said, "Oh, you're a Scorpio. You'll have a great time with that part." But he said you have to wait 30 years. And so yeah, so it's intimidating to play that part because everybody has an idea of who should be cast and who should be in
Mhm.
it. Everybody thinks about Elizabeth Taylor, except the young people. They don't
Right.
know anything
No
about it.
idea. They were just going to see a play,
Yeah.
right? Like
Uh,
with no baggage
no
tagging
baggage.
along
And it
with
was a
it.
lot of fun you could feel the audience. Zach and I would talk about this. Like the virgins and the people who knew the play. I remember there would be a gasp when they would
I
kind of
see
figure
you mean in
out.
terms of who knew it.
Yeah, like who knew that the baby didn't exist, right?
Like,
And then they
there are virgins
like,
in the
wait,
audience. Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
What? You mean the baby's fake? And that was so much fun. That was
But
great.
also,
One of the-
I still find that whole concept of what that is endlessly fascinating. Like,
Yeah,
like truly, what is that baby? What is that?
yeah. It's such wonderful, brilliant, poetic, gorgeous, imaginative, genius writing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's a good example. I hope I'm not, am I interrupting you? Don't tell.
No, no, I apologize. There was like a lag, and so we both were talking at the same time, but no, you are never interrupting me.
I lag a lot, by the way. So feel free to jump in. But
We'll put music. We'll just put little bits of music.
okay, good. I was I was just reminded of what you asked me in the beginning about the was about process, about how you what you do with all the theater training or the acting. Acting is acting. Whether wherever you do it, in my opinion. But that is a good example. I felt like when I was doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, as long as you have a director who provides you with a safe environment, an environment where you feel loved and confident and you can take risks, and I'm not talking about big, bold, loud, over the top risks. I mean, sometimes that's a risk, and sometimes the risks are small and intimate, but you feel free and you can just be whatever, and you're not trying to live up to anything. But there were a couple of places in that script where I just would hit a wall and say, what the hell is this about? Like, what was he on about? This goes on forever. What
Right,
is she? So I had to really go back and say, okay, what am I doing? Okay, I'm flirting. I'm impressing. I'm going to, what do I want? I want the little boy's attention. I want to show off. I want to impress. I want to make my husband jealous. Like, so that is what I was talking about when, sometimes it just comes very naturally and very easily, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. And
Right.
you need the craft, you need the tools to be able to figure it out. And then once you know what you're doing, then in my opinion, and for me anyway, I'm not nervous anymore.
Hmm.
You know what you're doing, you're not nervous. You just do what you play your, I know this sounds theater actory, studenty, but it's like you play your action,
When
and
you
then you're
were doing Feud, which was just also again like this incredible ensemble, as much as George and Martha felt like real life characters that you were playing, they're fictional. And so the expectation of, you really were allowed to do it however you wanted with tremendous freedom. And it sounds like you and Zachary together and the whole cast just had insane chemistry that really worked. And just watching Feud recently, uh, first of all, like thrilling. Ryan Murphy, I think, is really exceptional in also just hiring adult women, women of, in a time in their life where it's like, where are the good parts? And there was a show with like, there wasn't a bad part to be found. And even the smaller, day players or filled by Rebecca Kreskoff, some people that we love, right? Like playing all these parts.
yeah.
So when you, I mean, and also Robbie Bates was a writer on that, and you had done Brothers and Sisters. So obviously there's a certain amount of trust that like this writing is going to be extraordinary and hold me in a certain way. And there's an old friend working on this thing. But like, did that take was that like just an offer? Did that take many conversations to understand what the world would be like? Or was it all, this is a no-brainer? Yes, where do I show up?
This was a no-brainer. Where do I show up? It was an offer that came out of the blue. Um, I was, my agents were stunned. I was stunned. We were all like, what?
This
Me?
is
I-
great.
This is great.
Yeah.
So I said yes no matter what. And then, everything else was just a plus. I was just so happy to be asked to be a part of this show with all of those amazing actresses and Robbie and Gus. Like it just got better and better. And then Tom Hollander, who I think is just so extraordinary, such a gifted actor. And so it was a no-brainer.
Hmm.
But it was a little different. Of the playing Lee, there she's a real person, so
Right.
there's a responsibility to hopefully um get it right. um but on the other hand, our show was, and my part was small, and and it was just a little bit of Lee. Lee was so much more than what they had in the script. This was Robbie's version, and it was really, spicy and all of that to make it fun. And so it wasn't, we had a lot of artistic freedom in that. So but I did feel like a lot of people, a lot of people would ask me, oh, how are you going to play, are you going to copy her voice and do this? But everybody's, is just an essence
Right.
of the character. But I definitely, it you're right, when you play a part that's fictional, it's a little bit different than when you're playing a real person.
What, I mean, he was so extraordinary as Capote. I mean, all of you, every single one of you, somehow embodied this world with such specificity and fun at the same time. Naomi Watts, like everyone. Also, I felt like everyone looked extraordinarily beautiful. I felt like everyone was really well taken care of. Did you feel that on set, that there was attention paid to making everyone feel good?
I think so. I think that Ryan elicits trust. Like, I trusted him. I thought, well, if I look horrible, he's going to take care of me. Like,
Mhm.
I think people trust. He cares about the he cared very much about the hair and the makeup and the costumes, and he was, I felt like he was involved. Um and yes, of course I trust Robbie. Robbie is such a beautiful writer, but he's such a love of a person. So I absolutely felt like we were all in very good hands. And I think that, and I'm speaking out of turn, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but when I watch Tom, and Naomi is so wonderful, and Chloe and everybody is
Yeah.
amazing. But when you watch Tom, now that is an actor who was free and could take a risk, and he could just, whatever came to him in the moment, he was able to do because he had a really safe environment. I'm guessing this is
Yeah.
coming from me, not from anybody else, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I could see happening. And when you have that environment that is provided by producers and directors and everybody around you, and the support of the crew, um, there's no stopping somebody like Tom because he's just so talented. And then the it just comes flowing out of him like water. It just, it's a beautiful thing to see. And you could, and another job, I could see somebody like Tom because he's sensitive probably, and intelligent, and you can get squashed by the wrong environment. So
Mhm.
having said that, this was a beautiful environment for everybody to be working in, I thought.
Was there, you've been in terms of like, even people who listen who are not actors have now learned the term number one on the call sheet. Like it's become something they're aware of, which means you kind of have the biggest part in the thing, and the thing is built around you. And you've had a lot of parts where you've been number one on the call sheet. Was there some relief in not being number one on the call sheet this time? Was that heavenly?
Yeah. Yeah. It was nice, especially
Yeah.
coming back after so many years. I really haven't been acting. I first experienced not being number one on the call sheet when I was doing Supergirl.
Uh-huh.
Um, so Mopa Noise was number one on the call sheet. So that was the same experience. Yes, I felt relieved. I didn't feel like I was carrying the show and there was no responsibility. Some responsibility, but only
Yeah.
for my little part.
Yeah. Um, okay. I have had you for longer than is fair. There are things that you need to get to in your day. I feel like I've only scratched the surface. I have been such an admirer of yours, not just your work, but the way you've managed, we talked about this at the beginning, I don't know if you grew up thinking you'd marry like a really huge movie star and have a really like all of the like
Hardly.
that's an unusual thing, right? It's an unusual thing. And then like it seems like a really beautiful love story that those of us who are not inside of your life feel very inspired that two people can have artistic careers with integrity and build a family and step into public life when work sort of asks it of you, and yet also just be really able to just live your life. So I just from afar, and just because we have mutual friends, I just want to say, like, how beautiful to have
Oh,
that kind of love and family, and keep it for yourself.
no, it's very nice of you to say, and thank you. That's it. Yeah, it's nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Before I let you go, I have two questions. One, do you know the next thing? Like, are you getting ready to do something else? Do you know what it is, and can you talk about it?
I think I can. I hope I
Okay.
don't. I think I can. I'm going to do a Sam Shepard play at the new group in January, not till next year. It's The Curse of the Starving Class.
Wow. I feel like I worked on that in acting class.
But
Um,
I don't think I ever did, but I'm sure that somebody did.
wow. And who's directing it?
Scott Elliott.
You're going back, your old friend
I'm
Scott
my old
Elliott.
friend Scott Elliott. Scott Elliott and I spoke on the phone last week, and I said, you do realize that the last time you and I spoke, we did not have cell phones. Cell phones did not exist.
Right.
So
That's wild.
it's been like almost 30
That's
years.
incredible. Well, clearly you both remembered each other fondly, and it was a great work experience. Oh, do you know who else is doing the play with you or not yet?
I do. I guess I'm a, yeah, I do. Christian Slater, who I love. He's so amazing. And that's all I know so far.
Well,
But
that's a pretty exciting pairing. Okay, this is Evergreen. So we're talking about January 2025 listeners of the future who find this episode. And before I let you go, Calista Flockhart, do you have a little known fact that you can share about yourself?
here's that lag I was talking.
Let me hit the music button.
Play the music. You know what? I'm gonna say this. And um, there are some people in the world who will not agree, but I'm a pretty good ping pong player.
Okay, bring it, bring it. And all you naysayers, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Um, thank you for the incredible time spent today. This has been so much fun. I adore you. Thank you. And until the next time, and I will see you when you're in New York doing that play. I look
I hope
forward to
so.
it.
The feeling is mutual, by the way. I love your show. I love your podcast. I think you're so amazing. You're so personable and wonderful and kind and my the feeling is mutual. So thank you for
Wow.
having me. Thank
Oh
you
my
for
God.
asking me to be a part of it. I'm
I I
happy to.
have I'm going to say goodbye before but I want that to be the end. That's perfect. All right, sweetheart. Thank you. And I'll let Bill know when this is happening and I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Have a
Be well.
wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.